Welcome in, everybody. Welcome in. No matter what time of the day or night it is a great time to be a Gamecock. This is the Ladies First podcast. Finally joining me, I am Tony, here with Adam, my co-host. This is our third podcast, and we were raised as gentlemen, so we know it is ladies first, focusing on the Gamecocks, our great and accomplished and talented women's basketball team. They just took down the North Carolina State Wolfpack in a top 10 matchup, 71-57. So excited with how that game went. They really showed their stuff, even though one of our best defenders and scorers to start the season, Chloe Kitts, had to sit out. Ashlyn Watkins made her return, and this is all going to be something now we can look on to the home opener against Coppin State. Our entire beloved roster is going to be together. Before we get into all that, going to be bringing in my brother-in-law here, Adam. Happy to have you here with me, sir. How you feeling, bud?
A little nervous in comparison to our other podcast, but yeah, so the South Carolina Gamecocks, not something I was super familiar with until probably about March Madness last year, when I really started watching. We went to a few bars downtown to
right, man.
Really watch some of these matchups.
We got the hype.
Yeah.
You came at a good time.
I came at the peak, just before the
That's right.
championship game.
Now we're going to stay at the peak.
Yeah, and now I get to be along for the whole ride this time, for the whole season. I've been watching the games so far this year, and so basketball is, of the four sports of baseball, hockey, NFL, and basketball, the two I'm the least confident in are basketball and hockey. So I'm excited to be here so that I can finally figure basketball out. So I'm a Knicks fan, and so I've been watching them, but my knowledge of basketball starts and ends at these guys want the ball in the hoop. So I don't know how these positions work. I don't know how these plays are drawn up or anything, but I'm very excited to be watching a team that evidently now winning, their third championship in the last few years?
Yeah, it's been a great stretch between going back to before the late 2010s, 2017, 2022, 2024, and, they call them Dawn's Daycare. She just keeps bringing up these young women and putting together these incredible rosters, and they just keep doing it, just keep making these Final Fours, keep making these championship games, and, just from an aspect of, as you said, trying to get a little bit more up to speed with basketball. I know in a general sense, ball, it's just, more of the in-depth parts. And it's funny that you say that because, you're a big football fan. You understand a lot of the different breakdowns of coverage and routes and things like that. And football is a bit more of a complex sport, especially because you have 11 people on 11 out on the field. This is still just 5-on-5. But to truly capture the beauty of the sport and to not get caught up in all the crazy showmanship and some of the stuff, the highlight reel dunks and everything, I just love the breakdown of the fundamentals of the women's game, whether it's the passing, the defense, just the pure shooting that you see. And you're going to see a lot of that from these women, as we did watching things down the stretch when you really started to get into it with me, getting into March Madness last year. Me personally, and I talked about this on the first podcast, just reminders again, I've been a fan for about 4 years. Getting post-COVID with the pandemic when I moved down to Myrtle Beach, started to watch the women's team because they were on TV. They were beginning to have these televised matchups, and then going towards my tail end of the time living in Myrtle, I was already going to watch them. I watched them win the 2022 Natty. Watched them out in a bar with Myrtle Beach with your sister, my wife, and we had a great time doing that. And this is just something with moving to Columbia, it's made an incredible impact on me actually getting to see them in action, and I'm happy that you do as well. And I'm excited to get to a handful of games with you, but you ready to start breaking this down?
Absolutely.
All right, well, we're going to head into this last game. So up in Charlotte, and it's funny that you were up there for a wedding, that you actually went by the Spectrum Center while this game was going on, but obviously you had a prior engagement.
Yeah, I actually thought this game was Monday. I got the dates mixed up. So
Get it right, man. Come on.
I know. I need to get more devoted. Yeah, I thought Monday was the game, and I was actually thinking of, if I'm still in town when this game is going on, I'll get tickets, only for me to look it up and see that I was about probably 12 hours short of being able to make it, or maybe a little more. But yeah, I was in Charlotte over the weekend, so hopefully, crazily enough, their home center is much closer to us than Charlotte. So
Oh my God,
it'll be
yeah.
much easier for us to get to a Gamecocks game than it was over the weekend.
Yeah, we're in good old Irmo where we record these podcasts. That may change depending on where we go or live, but right now, we have this joint effort together, and it is a short little drive right into downtown Columbia, the beautiful Vista Colonial Life Arena, home of the Gamecocks, at least in the basketball sense, and we love them. So we're going to go over everything that went on up there in Charlotte. It was a nationally televised game, ESPN, and just putting more of a national spotlight. They had over 15,000 fans. I believe the attendance was closer to 16,000, and that's just something you're seeing, these packed houses, if not almost packed, for women's games. And you really didn't see that on neutral floors. It's convenient that it's right in between. You have a lot of a fan base of South Carolina and the Wolfpack, in a city like Charlotte, sure. But, you just go further and further back in time, you're not going to have, these 5-digit numbers. You're not going to have an almost full capacity crowd, but you get that for these games. And for what you can see when they're on a neutral floor, that is fantastic. That is something that is so awesome to see. Now, when they're home, they're, pack the fans in there. And that's also something that we're going to see a lot of this season. But it was 71-57. Great win for our women, and we did see some really good scoring numbers. Te-Hina Paopao, I know you like her name.
I'm a big fan.
It's I said she's everything going for her, like the Paopao, the name, and she's got WNBA talent, so she's going to be quite the marketable player.
When I watched tip-off when I watched the first game of the season,
yeah.
I actually, the first question I asked you was, do we have someone on our team named Paopao? And I was very excited about it. And to see that she is actually extremely talented to the point of possibly going to the league. It's just icing on the cake that she has such a great name.
It is. It's so good. And the funny thing is, and as you started to watch the games last year, I know you didn't start to get in depth on the household names. I already had a few years on you and had that under my belt. But yeah, she's been awesome ever since she came to South Carolina. She had 34 minutes. She was 10 of 16. 3 of 7 for three-point range. She really is good with that three ball. Against Michigan, and this was something that was lacking, which was another big part of why our output wasn't what it should have been, why we were, really in a gritty game with the Wolverines. But she scored 23 points, and, when she's hitting those threes, and at least someone else is, or whether or not they are, this is just a tough team to beat. That's a lot of scoring production that she's consistent with, and she was really finding her stroke with those threes. Usually she's closer to around 50%, 45, 50%, and that is crazy. Maybe if she could still find a stride and really improve on that as we go later into this season, go to the WNBA, maybe it'll be her in one of those three-point shooting contests against someone in the NBA. So we shall see about that. But Joyce Edwards, freshman, great game. She had 5 rebounds, 8 points. Starting to see a little more production from Bree Hall, Fagan, and also Raven Johnson, all averaging around 5 to 6 points. And then MiLaysia Fulwiley, superstar again in the making. 18 points from her. She was 8 for 14 from the floor. So you're starting to see more of your stars gain that traction and gain hold. And this is something else I talked about as well. When you're doing something like this, Adam, and it's in more of these highly contested moments, whether it's in the postseason, in the tournament when things matter, or these top 10 matchups like this when things really matter. It's going to really help you later in the season, whether it's getting your position solidified in the NCAA tournament. When you have big wins like this under your belt, especially on a neutral floor, it's only something that's good for the program and just to showcase, hey, we're both top 10 teams, but we handled them and we almost beat them by 15 points and could even beat them a little bit more if we were hitting a few more shots. So that's something that was great. One big thing that was surrounding this game, and this is just more of in-depth news that I'm going to keep trying to get you up to speed on. Chloe Kitts, one of our best players on the defensive side of the ball, who seems like she's going to make a stride in the offensive sense. She had to sit out because of academic reasons, but she'll be back for the home opener. So great news there that Chloe will be back because she had a fantastic game. She was the player of the game against Michigan. So to not have her in this one and still make this kind of impact is great to see just because of how commanding she could be. She just has great prototypical size, very active hands on defense. I love her style of play. Luckily, we did have Ashlyn Watkins back, though. She put in 20 minutes. She put up 6 points, and I know that she's going to build off of that, as she's a fantastic defender as well. The combination of those two, Kitts and Watkins near the basket, that's going to be a big difference maker as we look into the season. So make sure you are watching them on the defensive side of the ball. They're not super tall. We're not talking 6'8", 6'9", but they get the job done.
Now, will this team, with this upcoming game against Coppin State, will they finally be at full strength? Because we had, as you mentioned, Watkins was missing time, Kitts missing time. Will this next game, will they be up to speed? Or to full strength, I should say.
Of course, and this is something where you're going into a stretch now. These should be gimme games. This is something, as just someone who's analyzing this and breaking them down, I don't want to put other teams down, because you always have to remember you are still going up against very talented athletes. You're going against fellow Division I programs. It's just always going to be the scoring output and the talent gap that's going to be there. And this should be a team that they should easily blow the doors off of and run out of the building, especially as it's going to be them celebrating for their home opener, their national championship. I believe, if I read correctly, promotional items. A lot of the fans get it's like a little fake championship banner, Christmas ornament.
Oh, that's actually really cute.
Yeah,
I kind of want that.
Yeah, something such as that for those who are attending the game for the home opener, and it's going to be a great scene there. And they're just going to want to continue that success and follow it up as we start the homestand. And while this is going to be more of a gimme game, which typically you have in November and December, there's usually a lot of gimme games. This is somewhere where you really have to dig deep and start to figure out the identity of your team, because before you know it, you're going to consistently be playing ranked programs. South Carolina has one of the toughest strength of schedules in the nation because of how talented they are, how far-reaching they are. TV contracts and everything know that they want to see him play. I see you have the schedule. Look at some of those games.
I was going to say, end of November looks like a gauntlet. Number 5 UCLA, number 8 Iowa State on the road. You get unranked Purdue at home, or at least currently unranked Purdue at home, and then you go, you host number 16 Duke. Yeah, it looks like they're going through it for a good few days.
And even some of the unranked teams, they play at TCU not too long after that. So it's going to be a crazy, crazy stretch. I'm really looking forward, though, to some of these home games. Some of them are sold out. Unfortunately, did not get on in time to do season tickets, which I'm disappointed in myself with. I knew a lot of these games would sell out. They are. We're going to have to get a good handful of these tickets on resale, but it's just because people want to see a winner, and a very talented winner at that. So that is what we are now looking past, as they had this really great offensive scoring output against NC State, at least in the sense of getting into the 70s. You still have to say, hey, we put up 70-plus points against a top 10 opponent. And frankly, I still didn't think they played anywhere near their best game. This is only something that they're going to build on. And that's a good thing that you could always attest to looking down the road. When your team has bad games and you're still getting it done, you're good. That's just a great sign of a winner.
Yeah, so one thing I did notice, and I wanted to ask you about it.
Sure.
They had sort of a slow start, it seemed, against Michigan. And
very slow.
When I was rewatching the game against NC State, NC State went on, I believe, a 10-point run to go up. I think it was 25-21 in the first half. Is that something that they're sort of, that's just kind of getting the rust off, these little slow starts, or are they kind of getting behind on themselves, do you think?
Well, it's tough when you're getting out of the gate and you're trying to just make these small adjustments with your roster, because going into the season, you always know that you're going to be finding some teams that even aren't ranked that might have a player or someone that's just going to go above and beyond and maybe playing with a fire under them to try and beat you. And if you're not playing at the top of your game and maybe you're taking your opponent too lightly, it's going to be tough, especially when you're starting out the season and you're trying to gel as a team. The first game, they didn't have Watkins. Now, the second game, they didn't have Kitts, who was the best player in the first game. And, you're still just trying to plug and play some different pieces here and there. It doesn't really matter all the time, depending on the opponent, because there's just so much of a depth of talent on the roster. They're very deep. You could go onto the bench and still have some of the best players, have watch list, award-winning players on your bench, and that's just to the point of Don Staley building out this roster and it being so well-rounded. But it's tough because, when you're trying to move around these pieces and you don't know your true identity yet, it can be a little bit of a struggle out of the gate, especially against teams that are going to be scrappy. Michigan wasn't ranked, but they're stellar freshmen, who's something I could attest to with you, how we like to talk about players with cool names.
Yeah.
Like you can't suck. You have to be. If
you have to be cool.
You have to be cool. You have to be good if you have a cool name. And Silas Swords, Michigan.
That was right. Yeah, when I was watching that
cool
game, I was
name.
like, yeah, we have a East versus West Bowl situation.
Great name. And yeah, she put up 27 points against South Carolina, and she is a freshman just starting out with Michigan. So I'm sure that she is going to make a lot of noise in the Big Ten this year. Easily could see Michigan popping up in the tournament. That's a young team that has a lot of room to grow. Starting out the season, they brought in a top 10 recruiting class that she highlighted, of course. She's not this big menacing figure, not a big player. She just has such a pure shooting stroke. But, as a younger player, as a freshman, just has this little baby face. But, man, she could score. And you're going to get players like that. You are going to find more and more of this talent that is starting to pop up as there's just more interest in the women's sport. I personally think there's just going to be more of a drive with these players. I said this during the last podcast. With more eyes on the sport, more fans, money to be had, NIL deals that you can now have as a woman that these players, would never even have dreamed of. You go back before the pandemic, even the 2010s, it wasn't there. There were not enough eyeballs on the sport. There was no money going towards the sport. But now it's all getting filtered in. You're seeing all these superstar players, and for better or for worse, even players like Angel Reese from LSU. She's a big media personality now.
Oh, yeah.
Off the court, she's just making a name for herself. And if you could still do enough, get it done on the court, I would definitely like to see a little bit more from her for Chicago because I do like to watch the Sky with Cardoso going there. Big fan of hers. After she graduated last year and got picked with the 3rd overall pick to Chicago. So until Philly gets a team, I am a Sky fan for now and got a jersey for Cardoso. But I digress. It's where we are. You always have to see more of this talent that's just going to be popping up and more of these surprise players. Like we know South Carolina, and I do because I heavily studied the roster. I've watched the team for a good handful of time now, so I know our players. But I'm sure that over the course of the season, we're going to be surprised by, some of these players that might be coming out of nowhere, whether it's talented freshmen or sophomores who are not just trying to, make a case for themselves as a player to eventually make the WNBA, but also to get that bag.
Yeah, I mean,
seriously though.
That's why you want to get as many people in the seats as you can.
That's right.
Get your players
and
the
they
best.
deserve that
yeah,
too.
They do, especially with the product that's been brought forth over the last few years. I mean, when that push really started a few years back, it seemed like it wasn't really entertaining back in late 2010s, and now.
Well, because think of the UConn years. Like they got national attention, but basically from the women's realm, they were the only team I remember getting consistent coverage on, like Fox Sports and Sports Center. It was UConn and Gino Auriemma and their whole dynasty they had.
Yeah, and it was, if you're a casual fan or a potential fan, you need something to really draw you in, and for something like that, it did not seem super exciting for someone to get into. Of course, if you're a UConn fan, you're probably on top of the world.
Oh my God, yeah. All those titles, you kidding?
Yeah.
They were going nuts.
Yeah, but I think the women's game, at least in the last few years, when you have these personalities popping up, like Angel Reese, you had Caitlin Clark last year took over social media. It is now very exciting, and it's why I started watching, because it's like, oh, this isn't the women's basketball of old. This is a new era, and this is bringing in more fans. And this and WNBA, it's been a lot of fun to watch.
Yeah.
As someone who is very new to watching this new, almost a new version of the sport.
Yeah, it's still the same old basketball. You're
course.
still running the same plays. You're still trying to put the ball in the hoop. You are still at the end of the day wanting to end up with the higher score on the scoreboard. But yeah, you're just, finding more reasons for fans to cling on to the sport. And South Carolina doesn't really have a true big standout player, a true 100% face to the name. And that's just something that you can say about the program because of how well-rounded the roster is. There's not someone that just says, okay, yeah, I am definitely the number one superstar. I am the face of this team. I am the one that's going to get the ball and more than likely get the most points. It's like, no, because there's so much talent on this roster. And I'm just going to use that word talent so much this year because they just need to keep stressing that. And just the fact that you could really see this all around for the team. The upcoming freshman, Joyce Edwards, so good. She already has the potential. I believe she'll start putting up some double-doubles soon in the regular season. Raven Johnson, incredible last year. Te-Hina Paopao, she's obviously going to be drawn up for the WNBA and be very marketable with her name. And then, just coming back to the team, Ashlyn Watkins. She is an incredible defensive force. Easily could see her going to the league. MiLaysia Fulwiley, Tessa Johnson. We could just keep going on and on. Chloe Kitts. And I'm not trying to leave other members of the roster out here. I'm just trying to break down the players I think can make the WNBA make that jump. And perhaps this season, for whatever reason, or crazy play, whatever gets drawn up, or maybe there's a viral moment on social media, they'll become a superstar. They'll get further on that level and get more national attention and respect. And that is definitely something I've seen, at least on socials, between X and Facebook, different groups and fans that like to talk about the women's team and their national coverage. They say, hey, why doesn't South Carolina get more of that recognition? We're so good. This is just an incredible thing for the sport, the renaissance of women's basketball, and they are one of the big drivers of it, especially with Dawn Staley. But that's the thing. Dawn right now is their superstar. I would say Dawn is the superstar. She's the face of the team, face of that side of women's sports for the school, which is fair because she's been such a big personality. She's been an Olympian. She has been there and is a 3-time national champion as a coach. It's still nothing to take away from the players who are putting in the blood, the sweat, the tears out there on the court. But it just goes to the point of them being such a cohesive roster, so well-rounded. And no one really making that step forward to say, oh, yeah, I'm going to be the better one. I'm the top player here, having that superstar status. But social media could change that pretty quick.
Yeah. I think it's a good thing, a good sign when your coach is really your superstar. I mean,
maybe, right?
We've seen that across other sports leagues. I mean, if you look at the Detroit Lions, the face of the Lions, it's not Jared Goff. It's not Amon-Ra. St. Brown, for as good as they've been, it is Dan Campbell.
It's their coach.
And it's because he has really changed the culture there.
Yeah.
And for for the coach of South Carolina to be that and to have those titles and accomplishments under her name, I think that says a lot about her and the way she can lead a team like this where no one has stuck out, but it's because they don't have to rely on one person. It's because you can have anyone rotate in when you need them.
Oh, exactly. And when you have that kind of star power from someone who played the game, who is a big media figurehead, just, for how well-known she is, it's just incredible. And it's only going to follow up with recruiting as well, to have these recognizable names and faces, and just to know that if you come to a school, that you have a shot most years, at least in recent memory, to win a national title, to only get better under the tutelage of someone that clearly is getting the best out of these players, who is preparing a lot of these young women for a trip to the WNBA. Maybe not everyone does. Some will, maybe go to play overseas too. Perhaps some just want to pursue their degree, and that's just fine. But a lot of women now have better aspirations to want to play professional basketball because this is the chance. This is the opportunity where more of this success and the money is now carrying over from the NCAA now into the pros. And with more cities adding teams and hopefully more news coverage of that and articles written about it, I'm really, really looking forward to it. I cannot wait, as I'm a big Philly sports fan, to hopefully see a WNBA team popping up there in the next few years. I'll definitely be getting to Jersey. I hope to see some Gamecocks ending up in Philadelphia. That'd be an incredible crossover for me, and that's just what I really want to see with this. And just following the game more, seeing it grow. It has just been rewarding and inspiring. Another word I'm going to be using plenty of times this year, just inspiring.
Yeah, I would like to see the WNBA expand. I mean, I'm not sure off the top of my head how many teams are
12.
It's 12 teams?
12 teams, Adam.
Okay.
That's all there is.
Not a ton.
No.
Yeah, so it would be great to see it, of course, expand into big cities like Philly. But then even, I'm not sure, is there one in the Carolinas? Is there a
Well, no,
WNBA team?
there was the Charlotte Sting, but they're now defunct
Oh, okay. So then
because
now,
of the disinterest.
now there's renewed hope with the new push of WNBA fans and college women's basketball fans in general. So if you have a hub of talent and success like you have with the Gamecocks here, it would be interesting to see if we can once again give a WNBA team to the Carolinas.
Yeah. That's just what I want to see. I'm telling you. And a lot of these teams that a little bit more defunct had such cool names like the Charlotte Sting, like that was awesome, and the Houston Comets. Because they had the Houston Rockets, Houston Comets. But hopeful to see some of these teams make a comeback, and then some just starting anew. And this is something that just has to keep building on. And this is a platform that I plan to use, and I'm glad you're here with me. And I hope to see other platforms like this pop up, more shows done, maybe other people featuring their own schools or, more coverage for just WNBA teams. You got to keep the ball rolling. We need to keep this ball rolling. There's no pun intended. Just it needs to keep growing, because if people start to waver and maybe lose interest a little bit, then that's going to be detrimental for the growth of things in the NCAA and the WNBA. You need to grasp things while the interest is there. Need to keep fans motivated, fans interested. Find good people, hardworking people on behind the scenes teams from a marketing aspect. It needs to keep growing to that aspect to have a just an equal balance of pay. You still have a long way to go, obviously, when you're talking about the NBA and the WNBA, but just to continue to chip away at that pay gap and to get more eyeballs and national TV coverage of college games and those WNBA games. And I do plan to see a good deal of our beloved Gamecocks on teams over the course of the next few years. I'm sure there's going to be players from this roster and beyond, as long as this program stays as dominant as it is, and hopefully Dawn sticks around for a while. I know there was some rumors and some people on social media that were trying to get her to go coach the Kentucky men's team.
Really?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. There were some people calling for her and the school to reach out to Dawn to coach the men's team in their search this past year.
Interesting. That would have been an incredible poach.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
That would have been Have there been super successful women coaches for the men's side of the game?
Not that I recall. I mean, I know there's some assistants out there. I'm not 100% familiar about it, but just to the point of literally people, and I don't know who started it, if it was fans or if it was reporters or even someone internally from Kentucky who was like, hey, Dawn's great. She keeps winning at South Carolina. I wonder if she could coach our men's team.
I mean, clearly it's working out for South Carolina, but let's hope that those were nothing more than rumors. Keep her around for a few years, at least.
Yeah, but now I was getting a little worried about that. I was like, no, stop that conversation. It's like, no, I'm just starting to. I live here now, and I could actually see them play in person. You can't just leave.
You're in the golden days, the golden age right now.
Yeah,
live through it a little longer.
Exactly, especially because we're living just outside of Columbia now. It was a little tougher to get here from Myrtle Beach. Now to Colonial Life, it's 15-minute drive.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe a little more with traffic, but that's where we settle, and what we are now pushing to, just a quick update with the game. Yes, it is the home opener against Coppin State, and I just want to give a shout out to their best player, and her name is Layla Lawrence, and she put up a good scoring clip last season, almost averaged 15 points a game, and she's a returning senior forward. So I'm sure that she is probably going to be scoring a good deal of their points if they have any shot of keeping pace with South Carolina. So watch out for number 31. She is definitely going to be the only one probably being a big threat down there. Everyone else was around 10 points or less in terms of points per game last season, and I'm sure she's got a lot to prove. She actually might be a player that could be a fringe WNBA player, so just got to watch out for her. And you don't want to let these lesser programs hang around. I'll say it again. Don't want to put any teams down because they're still Division I athletes, but you just got to know and analyze these games as they are. And it's easy to do that now without putting teams down because Vegas sets most lines now for a lot of the women's games. So it keeps the bookies busier. You can't bet here in South Carolina. it is not legal yet for that type of sports betting, perhaps someday. But for those that eventually might have that capacity and, want to bet on women's basketball, it's just something else. Further, that is adding money and adding interest to the sport and further alluding to more coverage, because there is just a lot of platforms, especially on social media and YouTube as well, where you are seeing more of just betting platforms being like, hey, the bad beats of the day, or hey, look at this interesting women's basketball line of this top 15 or this top 10 matchup that bookies are now deciding on. And that just wasn't a thing before. We talked about this before the podcast, and I think that that's a fascinating thing. Always got to be responsible in gambling. Obviously, that's something, in your own right, you got to not get carried away with. And I know that people have listened to this podcast. Some might be in states where sports gambling is legal. Always got to gamble responsibly, but it is just another thing to pile on top of the growing coverage that is women's sports and basketball, as we're talking about it now.
Yeah, what they always say, gamble what you can only afford to lose.
Yeah, there you go. That's right. If it's legal, of course, where you live.
My bets have only exclusively gone south, so
sorry.
I don't think I'll be participating, even if it were legal here. I don't know if I'd let everyone else have the fun on that end.
But I know when the opportunity arises that people definitely will, especially when it comes to college sports, whether it's our football team or men's or women's basketball. They don't set lines in like soccer, baseball, I don't think yet I've seen. But, to see more of that little line, knowing that Vegas is watching and paying attention to these games, that's big. It really is, because that is just such a big aspect of the sports realm now, and where a lot of money and interest goes.
I mean, on this channel alone, we have, of course, this and NASCAR, the Palmetto Pit Stop podcast we talked about. I didn't know until this year that there were betting lines in NASCAR.
Oh, well, see,
and that
there you
brings
go.
a lot of eyes.
See, you're learning more.
Yeah, it brings a lot of eyes onto sports from people who might not watch your sport.
No.
But if they, go to a casino to bet and they see, oh, this seems like a safe bet for the number one team in the school or in the nation to cover against, let's say whatever the line is against Coppin State, that will get somebody, another set of eyes on your team. More exposure is always good. And then, multiply that however many times across the country.
Oh, yeah. You're just bringing in just random people sometimes that, see these things looking over sports books or just trying to find something new to bet on. Like, man, it's been tough. Football sucks. I can't win a damn thing. I'm going to try and bet on women's basketball. What the hell? Why not?
Yeah,
and
I've been saying football sucks for a few weeks now. I've been checked out of that one.
It's, depending on who you're a fan of. College, we're happy. We're
college. I'm excited.
Very excited. We got
NFL doesn't exist to me.
NFL. That's these happen. But we have our Nittany Lions, we have our Gamecocks. And both are. I'm interested to see actually, because we're recording this a little bit before they release the playoff rankings on this Tuesday evening. So interested to see where both teams are ranked. But it is nice to have, two horses in a race. I am really happy just being able to expand my fandom to another program, and not just in the realm of football, obviously in a big sense for women's basketball. But yes, as you said, random people who just, want to do some sports betting where it's legal, watching the game and tuning in and being like, oh, damn, like I can get into this. This is great. Like this women's game is really good. Good product. I never knew these women were this quick or this entertaining. But wow, I'm gonna just tune into more games just for the hell of it.
So you mentioned rankings, obviously in reference to college football.
Yeah.
But a question I've always had and never looked into. So basketball, college basketball, they play 2-3 times a week sometimes?
Yeah, typically.
When do these rankings change? How do they account for some of the losses and the victories?
It's usually going into the upcoming work week. So
Okay.
basically, as you transition past the weekend, going into the new start of the work week, that's when the new AP poll comes out, which for the most part is one that people more so pay attention to. There's a lot of different things that are broken down in basketball, a lot of different rankings systems and power rankings. There's still a coaches poll. There's a lot of things you could look at. RPI, but when you're getting past the top 25, because of course in basketball it's a lot more than that.
Yeah.
You're funneling 64 to 68 teams into the tournament format. So there's a lot more breakdowns of rankings that go on. Like, oh, hey, why is this team on the bubble? What's the strength of schedule? This and that. But yeah, it's basically going into Monday. That poll comes out, but it's still just more of a benchmark to start the season. It's so hard to gauge these teams sometimes, and some easily can surprise others. Some could easily climb into the top 10 from not being ranked, just because of younger players and freshmen just making that further leap. South Carolina obviously still is number one because they're coming off the championship, and until someone beats them, they should be staying at that number one spot. But they're just going to have a lot of punches thrown at them, coming in all over directions. And I mean that in the sense of literally all directions. All these teams from across the country, whether it's USC, whether it's UConn, Texas, and that have a lot of younger and talented players and have returned some good players. And I'm just seeing this season and how it plays out. It's going to be so difficult with this schedule to run the table. It's still possible, but it is going to be so difficult with the pedestal that they've been put on and the schedule that they have, because people want to watch them play other top 10 and 5 teams, because guess what? That draws eyeballs, and that's going to be, bringing people to these national TV audiences that are now here as a commonplace for these women's games.
Yeah, and I believe after the game ended this past weekend, they mentioned it was 40 straight games they've won.
That's right.
So you can imagine that everybody who plays them now, no matter if they go on the road or they come to Columbia, it is going to be everybody putting up their A game because they want to be the ones that end that win streak.
Yes.
So you're not just playing to win every week. You're going to be playing against people who want that distinction of being the team that took down Carolina. So you saw it with Georgia a few years ago. They're undefeated for a while, and Alabama was able to take them down, and it was a big storyline finally ending that win streak. And if you're on the other side of that, it's pretty good for you in the eyes of the media. So you can only expect that every team that lines up against Carolina in the coming weeks is going to be ready to leave it all on the court.
Yeah, and that's how it is with college sports too. You're always going to be that program with the target on your back, and when you really solidify it with the number of games, it's a bit more likely in basketball for that to happen. Football, it's easier to have some of these streaks because there's only 12 regular season games. It's a short season, and if you really are that good, despite all the moving pieces that come with a football game, you can run the table. For women's basketball last year, they won 38 straight games, got 2 now under their belt. So that 40-game win streak is something that a lot of people are going to want to come for. It was the same thing as we spoke about before with the dynasty that they had at UConn. If this is a team that puts together and strings enough wins and perhaps more championships with the current crop that we have here and finds their way to a dynasty, which I would say, you win this year, you pretty much are a dynasty. You usually 3 championships,
3 or 4.
Within a span of 4 years, which it would be. You'd have 2022, 2024, 2025, which would be incredible to say, hey, damn right, we were a part of a dynasty, or dynasty, as some people have affectionately
coined that one.
Coined that or referred to it on social media. But big game, just in the sense of it's nice to see the team back. The entire roster is going to be all together. Love that against Coppin State, and that is going to be streamed only. That's going to be on the SEC Network Plus or SEC Plus, I believe, Thursday evening. 7 o'clock. So that is where we settle right now. Adam, it's been good to have you here. Do you have any final thoughts for the moment?
I don't think so. I'm going to have to really get into learning the details of the game before I can really settle in, call myself a big fan. But I'm excited to see what lies ahead for this team, if they can chase down, I believe that record at UConn was over 100 wins, wasn't it? 100 consecutive?
I forget off the top of my head. That's definitely something. If this continues, and as we keep on with this show, maybe we'll have to make a graphic if they still keep on a ridiculously good streak. It's just in this day and age. You said also great before, it feels different. This women's game feels different because there's just a lot of personalities and a lot of this energy just coming from these other, top 5 programs. Maybe as you get towards 10 to 15 ranked teams, there's a little bit more of a gap, but definitely could be worried about some of these programs like USC, like UCLA, like UConn and Texas, because they will be gunning for South Carolina, and they are going to want some revenge from last year for teams that got beat, or they just want to be able to call themselves the queens of the hill, I guess, since this is the women's game. So not king of the hill, but queen of the hill. And
Yes.
and that's something that we're going to watch out for this season with all these incredible matchups.
Yeah, but as long as that goal of, if they are going for that UConn title there, the record on that end, as much as these teams are going to come in wanting to break that, the closer they get to that number, the more I can imagine Dawn's going to instill in them. It's like, these could be immortality, to have those. So
Well, see, I think-
these guys will be fighting very
I think
hard, too.
maybe in her head that'll be there internally, but I feel like just in a public sense or to your players, you never
It's every week, 1-0.
1-0 mentality. Yeah, 1-0 mentality. You can't get caught up in the show and him making history like that, and you try to tune that out. As a player, I would imagine at the Division I level, it's a lot of noise. There's a lot of things thrown at you, a lot of things you see on social media, even with the women now, with all the coverage that they get. So we just are buckling up. We're keeping it one at a time. We got Coppin State home opener this coming Thursday, and a great season. A lot of fantastic discussions to be had, and I am really looking forward to getting more in depth when we start to see some of these top 10 matchups popping up again, and watching them and the national coverage, whether it is at home or away, and obviously plan on getting to a good handful of games with you this season. So we're going to keep up with these shows, keep up with the content, and please like and subscribe. Please like this video. Please subscribe to the channel. It only helps us grow and continue to cover our Gamecocks as we go further into this season. We really want to be able to see this page grow and not even just be on YouTube here, eventually expands to other platforms like Apple Music and Spotify. But liking and subscribing as we are still here just on YouTube would be a great help to us. So thank you so much for being here, everybody. As always, it is a great day or evening to be a Gamecock. I am Tony, here with Adam, officially for the first time. We appreciate you, and we will see you next time.